Welcome to the module on quality management systems. In this modules, we will talk about ISO 9001 2015 and in particular, we will be talking about the objectives, how to set the objectives, what is the meaning of objectives, and how to identify a smart objective within your department. So to start with, what is ISO? ISO is basically giving you an indication of about International Organization for Standardization. The objective of ISO is to promote the development of standardization across the world. It publishes standards for systems and products. ISO 9001 2015 standard, which is the standard for quality management system requirements. It talks about the requirements one has to maintain in order to get ISO 9001 certification. It will only give you the requirements. It doesn't tell you how to fulfill those requirements. In my opinion, if you see ISO 9001, it just tells you to follow the simple rules of life, that is, what you say you should record or write as a method statement or a SOP or a work instruction, and what you write you should follow in order to check the output. Once written, said, written and followed, that needs to be checked for improvements if any. So it is a sort of a cycle which tells us that what you are saying is being written and what is written is being followed, and what is being followed, if it is giving you the intended results, that means there is a less chance of improvement in your process, and with time and with the passage of technology, with change in requirements, these processes can be improved again and again in a cyclical fashion, so that there will be a improvement seen in the overall process. That is the reason why people believe that if you are a ISO 9001 certified organization, then you have a system or you have a set process which always talks about the improvement for your processes. ISO 9001 2015, the clauses are, main clauses are starting from clause number 4, which talks about context of organization. Clause 5 talks about the leadership. Clause 6 talks about the planning. Clause 7 talks about the support services. Support services can be in terms of resource, people, infrastructure, organizational knowledge, competence, awareness, communication, and documented information. So the combination of clause 4, 5, 6, and 7 is what is called a format of plan, and clause 6, which talks about the operation, comes under the category of do. Clause 9, which talks about the performance and evaluation, comes under the category of check. And then the final clause 10, which is basically an improvement clause, comes under the category of act. So this is how the complete ISO 9001 2015 standard follows the PDCA cycle, and PDCA is basically used for improvement in the process. So what are the objectives? Objectives can be general or specific. General objectives are basically, you call it as a goals, and specific objectives are called objectives. The general objectives of your study states what you expect to achieve in general terms. Specific objectives break down the general objectives into smaller, logically connected parts that systematically addresses the various aspects of a problem. For example, if you take or if you see your career path, you may be willing to be the owner of a process, you may be willing to be the owner of an organization, owner of a system. So that career path, the end result of your end vision of your career path, is what is known as the general objective or the goal of your life. And in order to achieve that goal, you have to have an incremental approach to build your competencies for achieving the goal at the end. So when we are talking about the incremental approach to build the competencies, that means there has to be a systematic, continuous development in the process as well as the level of competencies. You need to set small objectives which are basically called as the SMART objectives, so that the moment you start achieving small objectives, for example, if you want to reach from the ground floor to the first floor, you use ladders, okay, and if you are using a staircase, now the landings of the staircase, if you feel it as an ultimate objective of you being reaching to that level, then each step you cross is basically the SMART objective, and the time taken to complete each step is basically the time taken to multiplying the number of times you have taken, you have stepped to reach the landing is basically the time taken for achieving those goals. So your SMART objectives can be of smaller durations, and goals can be of longer durations. When we talk about the difference between the goal and the objectives, objectives should have targets to achieve, whereas goals can be a general statement. Objectives are associated with the action plan, whereas goals are not having a complete action plan, but can have a piece of action plan which is associated with your objectives. So the number of objectives, the goal is being divided into the number of objectives. Okay. Now, focused or critical activities, objectives are meant for focused or critical activities, or the gray areas where you are facing difficulty in achieving the set targets. You set objectives because objectives will give you a focused approach in order to handle those situations, whereas goals are the routine activities or the general activities like reaching office or doing a particular job repetitively a number of times, and so far and so on. Objectives can be singular, but goals can be a list of activities. Objectives must be measurable and tangible, whereas goals may not be strictly measurable or tangible. Objectives needs to be precise action for accomplishment of the specific task. Whether you are achieving the task or not achieving the task is depends upon the action plan you have initiated to get that objective. So if you're not able to achieve the task, then you have to revise your action plan and then try to achieve the task, because unless until you achieve the task, you will not be able to move further. Similarly, goals are the general intentions towards the attainment of something, which may be action oriented, which may not be action oriented. Objectives can be precise targets set for a short term, whereas goals can be for a longer time. Now, if you see an example, I want to achieve success in the field of genetic research and do what no one has ever done. So this is a wish list. This is my thought process. So it can be a goal in my life. But if you want to achieve this goal, then the objective has to be, I want to complete a thesis on genetic research within this month, so that at least I will be able to cover up this much of distance in order to reach my final destination. So this is how the objectives and the goals are defined, but generally we end up in defining our goals as an objective. So we have to be careful while defining an objective, and we have to be attentive when we talk about our objectives. So the framework for objective, if you see, a commonly used management method recommends defining smarter criteria for your goals. Therefore, the objectives must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, as well as evaluated on a regular basis in order to ensure whether you are on a right track, or you need some changes in your action plan so that you will not miss the target, and it can be recognized or rewarded if achieved, and revisited our action plans if not, because ultimately you have to achieve your objectives. Whether you achieve it in one go or you achieve in number of goals, It depends upon the efficiency of the work or efficiency of the action plan which is being planned in order to get those objectives faster. Therefore, objectives needs to be SMART. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. That means you must know what level you are, you must know what level you want to reach, and you must know how, whether it is practicable or not practicable. For example, if I say that I want to have a zero incident rate or zero fatality rate, zero fatality is somewhat possible, but if I want to say that I want to have a zero incident rate, uh, for a complete life, I want to have zero risk in my complete life, which is not possible because risk has to be there. But how to minimize those risks is what is leading you to set your objectives. So the objectives, why the objectives are required? So the objectives are required for continual improvement. Continual improvement in the areas like there has to be an improvement in your process, there has to be an improvement in your product, there has to be an improvement in the culture, and there has to be a growth in the organization. General saying, if you see, if you don't have an objective, that means you stand for no growth. So no objective, no growth. Basically, that means indirectly we are saying that objectives are set for the area where we are facing difficulty in doing a particular activity or leading a particular sort of life. So if your objective has to be in that line only in order to overcome that situation, if you are running away from the situation, then you will not be able to grow or improve in your life. So what is a continual improvement approach on which the objectives are based upon exactly? If you see continual improvement approach, that means you need to have a plan. So like the plan should have what is to be done and how it is to be done. And then you need to have a do activity, which is basically do what was planned and then check what has been done with respect to the plan which is being provided, and then see how to improve or take immediate corrective actions. So this is basically a PDCA cycle. PDCA, that means stands for plan, do, check and act, which is indicating a continual improvement cycle or continual improvement approach. How? Because the moment you start planning, you are doing something, you are checking whether you are doing as per plan or whether you are doing things is giving an output which is being intended for, or if there is a variation, then if that variation is there, then how to control that variation is. So in order to control that variation, again you need to change your plan. So that is how you have to have a continuous PDCA cycle run across for improvements. That is why we say objectives are basically meant for continual improvements. So if you are setting an objectives, as we said, objectives are required to improve on your gray areas. And if by chance or by somehow, for example, if reaching office is a pain in your area of work, this is just we have taken an example because in Mumbai it depends again depends upon so many factors if you want to reach office on time. So definitely it's going to be a pain area for many of us. So if it is a pain, then you can always have an objective in this area so that the pain can be minimized. That means objectives are set to improve the gray areas or the pain areas which you have. Now what is required is you have to reach office on time. So if your office timing is say around 8:45, that means your target should be to reach office by 8:45. So in the absence of any data which is available, which is not available with you, like what time you are normally reaching at, so you can say that the start time should be your target time, and you are setting your objective as reaching office daily by 8:45 a.m., which is a specific time frame you have given. Now, this objective demands an action plan in terms of your wake up time and your preparatory time in order to make yourself prepared so that you can start your journey from residence to the office. And then it again depends upon the selection of mode of travel and the travel time you generally end up in order to reach the time in order to reach the office on time. So when you follow this cycle and you are seeing that even after following this cycle you are not able to reach office by 8:45. Suppose you have collected a data of around say 1 month's travel time from residence to office, your preparatory time, your travel time, and then you are reaching office time, and you have seen that almost 40% of the days you are not able to reach the office on time. That means you need to revise your objective in such a way that you can say that now I want to reduce my deviation from 40% to say 30% or 10%, and within the next say a couple of months. So in order to see that couple of months how to reduce, you need to have a detailed study on what is being happened for the last 1 month. What are the areas where I need to improve, like maybe the start time, you start from the residence to reach the office. Maybe it is depends upon the number of days. Maybe on holidays you are taking less time to reach office. So all those unpredictable surprises can be covered, and based on those risks which is being involved in that particular activity, you can set or revise your objective, saying that I want to reduce my delays reaching office by from 40% to 30% by the end of next say 3 months. And for doing that, I need to change my wake up time, I need to change my start time, I need to change my mode of travel from day 1 to day 2 or day 2 to day 3, and so forth and so on. So this is how basically the objectives got to be set in order to improve a process or in order to improve your gray areas. PDCA cycles are helping you to set objectives and improve your process or improve your gray areas. Like in this case, your P or plan area is how to reach office by 8:45. So which will obviously cover your wake up time, your time consumed in preparing yourself, and then your mode of travel selection. And again, it depends upon what day you are traveling, whether it is a holiday or a weekday or a weekend. So then you have to act according to the plan for the day, which is being starting from Monday to Saturday. So Monday you will be traveling by your own vehicle, Saturday you can travel by a bus or a private vehicle. Monday you can start by say around 1 hour before reaching the office, and Saturdays you can start your travel time maybe around 40 minutes before the start of the travel, so far and so on. And then you need to check each day what time you are reaching the office, whether it is 8:45 or you have a cushion of upper bound and lower bound of say 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever suits you in the initial days, and then act to revise the complete cycle of PDCA so that your gap for reaching the office by 8:45 will be shortening day by day, year by year, or month by month. So this is how the improvement in the process can be achieved, and this is what is basically we are talking about, a continual improvement in the process which is being difficult for you to do a activity. But if a person is staying just opposite to the office, then maybe this is not the objective for that particular person. He can have a different set of objectives, but by any chance one has to be very clear that objectives are set for the gray areas or the areas where they are facing difficulties, not in the areas where they are comfortable in. How to improve? How to improve in a life, or how to improve in a process, or how to improve in a particular activity, then the objectives will help you to improve. So you need to set your objectives, you need to operate on your objectives, you need to monitor the objectives in terms of checks that what is being intended in the plan is being achieved or not, and if it is not achieved or if there is a deviation, then the needful correction needs to be done at the planning stage to revisit the action plan. You need to revise your action plan, you need to act based on your revised action plan, and the whole process needs to be viewed as a scope for improvement. So that's why we say that objectives are required. If you feel that there needs to be an improvement in your process, is you see that you need to have an improvement in your time cycles, you need to have an improvement in your any activity, any part of life, whether it is work or your personal life. If you have to improve, you need to set objectives. Without setting the objectives, you will not be able to improve anymore. So some guidelines to set a corporate objectives, if you can have a look, like you need to have an objective established for the processes relevant to your quality management system. It should be in line with your customer requirements. It should be in line with your product and service conformities, which can be monitored, communicated, and updated at regular frequencies, so that the objectives shall be in line with the market demand and will not be obsolete at a point of time. To summarize this module, we talked about the definition of ISO, we talked about ISO 9001, we talked about the requirements of the quality management systems, we discussed about the different clauses being given in ISO 9001-2015. Generally, it starts from clause 4 and ends in clause 10, how the different clauses are responding to a PDCA cycle. And we talked about the objectives and goals. What is the difference between the objectives and the goals? We talked about the PDCA cycle, that is plan, do, check, and act, how the PDCA cycle is helping you to improve the process, how the PDCA cycle is adjusting itself in line with the continual improvement, and how to set the corporate objectives if at all it is required to be set, and how to set the objectives, the smart objectives in your day-to-day life or in a process which you want to improve. So in the next module, we will be covering in specific how to write or how to define your departmental objectives, and how the objectives can be different from your key result areas or the KRAs, which we generally write off. Well then, thank you. Thank you very much for watching this video.